Hi,
Hi there.
I'm John. This is Lou.
Hiya.
And this is a little series where we're talking about Lou's counselling. In the last one, we talked a bit about a perspective of change, where she used the analogy of a city, how, although you're trying to get from A to B, you might actually go from A to Z to F to T before you get there. And how change sometimes doesn't look as if you're going in the right direction. Sometimes you have a bad day, etc. And it was a good analogy to use, and I quite liked that one. And now in this one, you're going to talk about a different perspective of change, aren't you?
Yeah, we're talking about the way that we think and react. Now, there is a little word called neuro pathways, and if you are a neuroscience, some of the things that counsellors have known and been doing in their counselling room for a long time, they can actually even see the process of change and what that looks like. And it has been proved that you can undo one thing and start something new with the process of your brain, and they can even show it happening, which of course I'm not going to do. I'm going to use a very simple analogy, okay? But we're talking here about the language of change. And I just want to talk about my brother briefly, because this is a good little analogy. He fell in love with a French woman, okay? He didn't speak French, but because he wanted to build a relationship with her, he actually then began to learn French. Okay? So obviously for a while, I would go and visit them, and he'd be coming out with these little phrases and she'd be correcting him, and so it was a bit of a stumbling process, and I think he wouldn't say that he was particularly good at language, so to start off with he would have found that kind of difficult, so it was very laborious. He'd think of the English and then she'd help him construct that. But he was really motivated because, he wanted to build a relationship with her. So the end goal was really important in this, with this first horrible bit of learning a language, which is flipping hard work.
Absolutely.
Okay. But then I noticed that he said in his mind, it became somewhat more flowing. And so he learnt your French. So in his mind, the English would come in, but he was beginning to build up quite a lot of vocabulary and understanding. So he would then translate it into French, and it was much less hard work, but still it was one being changed into another. Okay. Then he went and lived in France. And then the third stage was, because he'd so immersed himself in the language and in the culture, that he said he thought in French. Okay. And that was the process that he went through, and any linguist will tell you, particularly if they want to do the language well, that there comes the point where you naturally think in the new language.
You think in that language.
Okay. That's a really, really useful analogy to talk about the way that we change the way that we think. Okay. So, for example, one of the biggest change that goes on in a counselling room is you're going from the language of self-doubt, self-condemnation, to the language of encouragement, affirmation, building yourself up. Okay. But the first thing you have to do is recognise that what language you're speaking. I have to work with clients, and we have to tease out, okay, what are your thought process? And it's often things like, oh, you're really stupid, or I can't do this, or I feel so ashamed about what's going on. So first of all, we identify that horrible language, the language of negativity, and then it's actually quite helpful to replace it with another kind of sentence or whatever. Easy to do, okay, but the most important thing you understand at that point is it can feel, oh my God, however can I learn to say, actually, I'm kind and courageous, that's who I am. So it is laborious, but you're building, the motivation is you're building a new relationship with yourself. You're learning to love yourself, okay? So I'm very clear on this bit, that this bit is going to feel laborious. But if you understand the process, you'll understand this is just the first bit, okay? So that the next bit you come to is a thought comes in saying, oh, you're really stupid. And then you think, no, I'm not stupid. Actually, I'm doing very well in this situation. I'm quite bright. So you're beginning then in your head to translate as you go along from the language of negativity to the language affirmation and you know, healthy well-being.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then one day, I'm courageous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really bright. You start to think.
Yeah.
In the new language, you begin to actually access that neural pathway has been changed into a new neural pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we talked about science at the beginning is actually you can prove, you know, they can show you that happens.
Yeah.
You know. So that first bit is hard. It does feel really laborious.
Mm-hmm.
But if you understand the relationship and the motivation for doing it, and you understand I'm a coach at that point. I coach.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, your psyche will listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
It will listen. You know, and I mess around a lot with the psyche. My psyche has a committee, and we talk about the committee, you know. And if you first say it, your psyche has a committee. No, she doesn't mean that, because she's been saying this. We'll run with what she's been saying, you know. And then you'll think, oh, we need to have a committee meeting about that. She keeps saying something different to what she said for ages.
Yeah.
Well, we better keep an eye on this.
Yeah.
Third committee meeting, she's really clear that she actually is a courageous, kind person. We need to back her. You know, so we have quite a bit of fun actually with this committee in the psyche.
Yeah, that a Pixar film, was it Inside Out?
Yeah, brilliant film.
It's extremely good, and you know, and to be honest, you can watch it just as a comedy, but if you sit back, it's very astute.
Extremely clever. Yeah,
Very astute.
Yeah.
And these things actually go on inside the brain, you know.
Yeah.
And you do have characters in there. You know, you do have your committee in there.
Yeah.
I've got my Greek chorus, and, you know, the sort of, you know, and
yes, his negativity sings to him.
yeah, yes, it's a Greek chorus that sort of tells me you are rubbish. You know, it's like, oh, they're out again. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a useful thing to sort of start to identify the characters in there, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the other thing is that, like you can see already, that we kind of make it fun.
Yes,
you have got to make it fun. So there's a lot of laughter. You know, if you're with me listening to, and mind you, it's the same with you listening to you. It's not unusual to find laughter happening, because we try to make it, you know, comedy if we can, to lighten everything.
Well, it is the absurdity of some of the things
of us. Yes.
Well, the absurdity of us, but it's the absurdity of the way we think sometimes, you know, and how we fixate. We get certain thoughts into our head, and they just don't fit with reality at all. But it's difficult to move them, and sometimes the best way to move them is to laugh at them.
It's highly likely, if you're living with the drinker, that the language of negativity has become your language.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and in the bit of the program when we say stop and care for yourself, one of the things to do, I think, is to examine now what you say to yourself and recognize that language can be changed and must be changed. For your sake, because if you're living with a drinker, I can promise you're courageous, you're strong, you're loving, you're kind, all of those things. Otherwise, you wouldn't be with your partner. You know, so start telling yourself the real truth.
One of the exercises I quite often use with people is to get them to tell their story, but tell it as somebody else. You know, so I'll get Mary to tell her story, but she's telling her story as if she's talking about Jean, you know. So that kind of, it takes away that self-consciousness about it, you know, and they can start and talk about how well they did in this and well they did in that.
Really
it takes away that, you know. It kind of almost bypasses the committee, it bypasses the chorus, you know. And sometimes people find it really useful to do that.
Really useful thing to do. So, okay, so I hope you find that interesting. So bear it in mind if you decide to change the language of negativity to the language of healthy self-esteem. And be kind to yourself on the journey, and remember, it is absolutely worth it.
Again, that was very good. I like the idea of seeing it as a language, you know, and using the French, I think, is a good analogy for it. You know,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. Yeah, you sometimes come up with something good.
But just stick by me, darling. I think we might learn something.
Nah.
Oh dear, thank you for listening.
Okay.
Join us for the third one, which is going to be about narrative and perspective, and I might do some more as we go along, because I'm getting a bit between my teeth here.
Oh, okay, you can see it. She's off. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.